I asked Jay this a couple minutes ago, but I'm curious of your take. I know you guys are always self-scouting and kind of trying to figure out what to tweak and how to adjust. I was curious the offensive approach, how much you look at changing the scheme versus, the personnel, depending on personnel, just kind of that evolution. How do you approach that?
Well, we watched the whole season from last year. We the whole season's cut up, so you watch all your third downs, for example, third and short, third and medium, third and long. You watch your red zone, goal line, low red zone, high red zone. You watch all your run and pass concepts, every time you ran a certain run play. Um, and you get a different perspective when you look back on the season and when you watch things that way. And oftentimes patterns emerge. Sometimes you realize maybe we did something a little too much or should have done something else a little bit more. Sometimes you notice certain players like, wow, that guy played really well for us last year. Give you one example is Keelan Marion. When we watched cutups, he really showed up. He made a lot of contested catches last year, and we think most fans think of him as a kickoff returner and a guy that is exciting running with the ball. But he made a lot of really good catches for us in tight space. Those things, you just learn a lot of things about yourself when you look back on the season in that manner. And so then what you do is a couple of things. One is you try to make tweaks to your offense that feature your best players. You always want to get the ball to the best players and find the best ways to do that. And then you also have to always have just enough new stuff that your opponents haven't seen before. So you're always working on a few new things to kind of stay ahead of the good defenses we play in this conference. And then, of course, you want to still have an identity and still have a core offense. So we try to the core identity of our offense is going to stay the same, but we have enough, I think, new wrinkles and new things this year that we'll have some surprises for people for sure.
Do you do a lot of that in spring, or is that something that happens more after you've got the fundamentals down when you get into fall, or kind of is that an ongoing thing?
It's ongoing. Yeah, it's both. You still, obviously, spring ball is very much about fundamentals and technique, but at the same time, if you want to get good at something new, if you have a new pass concept, or you want to line up a different way to feature certain players, if you don't start doing it in spring, it's hard to be any good at it by fall. You get 15 practices in spring and you get 29 in the fall. And then what is that? That's 44 something, right? And then during the season you have 12 weeks of practicing 3 times a week, so your practice season is more than halfway over by the time you play your first game. And so if you're not working on it in the spring, it's tough to put in anything new mid-season, because you're only going to get a couple practices of, a few reps at it that week and 2 or 3 practices. And so now's the time for sure.
All right. Go ahead. Let's see if you have a next question, go ahead and raise your hand.
Aaron, I was going to ask you in terms of balancing new players versus veterans, in terms of just the work you're going to get in the spring, how do you balance that?
Great question. We're asking ourselves that every day. What's the right amount of work for veteran players that have, no one's arrived. Okay, everybody's still improving, but at the same time, you have some guys that can play and that are going to play for us in the fall, and so it's like a tough balance to get them the right amount of work without, you want to limit the risk of injury. And so that's a question we ask every single day, and we're trying to measure that carefully with our sports scientists. Those guys give us a lot of great feedback, and then some of it sometimes depends on which practice surface we're on. We'll do a little more contact when we're on grass and maybe a little less when we're on turf. All those things come into play. And then your younger players that you're developing, those guys can, just get as many reps as possible. That's almost no such thing as too much for those guys.
The one unit you seem to be turning over a little bit is your offensive line. How have they come along so far in spring?
Good. I like that group a lot. We're, there's a few guys that are still learning what to do and they're making mistakes each day, but you see the size and the athletic ability is definitely there. And so I'm very confident in that group. And the guys that are mostly taking reps with the starting 5 are been playing really well. And then we have 3 or 4 others that are very close to those guys. And then 3 or 4 that are kind of a notch below them, like just in terms of their knowledge and knowing what to do. But athletically, physically, it's a really good group.
Aaron, wanted to follow up with the offensive line. And one of the new faces that's competing for, an opportunity is Kyle Safaricik. I hope I'm saying his last name correct. What was it about him that you guys liked about him when you identified him in the portal and thought he could be a good fit?
Just he's a tough guy. He's physical. He's tough. He's a guard that embraces being a guard. He's not a guard that wishes he played tackle. There's some of those guys out there. He likes to be in there, just in the scrum. He's a tough kid that likes contact, and then he's really strong in the weight room. Very, very strong in the weight room. One of the strongest guys on our team, and he's doing a good job out there.
And then kind of big picture, just how do you feel the offense is and the players are embracing what feels like heightened expectations for the program this year now that you've proven you can win in the Big 12? How do you feel like the group is embracing those heightened expectations?
Well, I don't think anybody thinks we've arrived, and I think all of our players are aware. We had a great season last year, but a lot of those games were very close games that could have gone the other way. And now we pulled them out and we won them. So that's credit to our players, but everybody knows that every week is going to be a fight in this conference, and we're not going to sneak up on anyone this year. I think our players are mature enough to know that. We have good leaders. And so the sense of urgency is higher than it's ever been in what I see from our leaders. And so we'll find out when we play in the fall. We have to go win the games, but I believe our players understand what's at stake. And I don't think anybody's relaxing or thinking that, and if anything, everybody wants to take another step, so I think we're working towards that.
All right. Thanks. Jay, you're next, followed by Casey, then Matt.
Yeah, Aaron, last year limitations with the tight end kind of caused you not to be able to use that position probably like you would have wanted. Do you feel like you're better equipped this year with Carson Ryan coming in and others to get the ball to the tight end more?
Yeah, we've been making a point of getting the ball to Carson every day in practice, because he's, I always say the ball goes to the best players on the team. That's just how it is, and it always will be that way. Whoever our best players are, we'll find ways to get them the ball. And through 7 or 8 practices, whatever we're at right now, I forget. He's proven that he's one of our best players on offense. So we're finding ways to involve him more, and the better he does, the more we'll involve him. And if there are other tight ends that prove that they can be, amongst our best playmakers, then we'll get the ball to them too. And but that's just how it works, and he's doing a good job. So each time he does something well, we find another way to use him. And the same thing goes for the running backs. We have good running backs, and so we're finding ways to use those guys and get the ball to them. And there's no shortage of creative ideas from our coaching staff. We have good coaches that have been all over different levels of college and pro football, and so there's lots of fun plays you can run as long as you have the right people to execute those things.
And then I know you didn't scrimmage today, so this question might be kind of moot, but has there been any separation with the backup quarterback race?
There have been days where I thought maybe there was some separation, and then the next day the other guy will make a few good plays to keep it close. And so I'm not dodging your question. I think the body of work right now is not large enough to make any statements about that. And my process in the past with choosing starting quarterbacks has always been to let it play out for a while, and then eventually it gets to a point where everybody on the team knows who the starter is. And you don't really, when you make an announcement, it's like everybody on the team's like, yeah, duh, we already know that. And I feel like that's the way it's played out most of the times in my career. And I'm hoping that the same thing happens with the backup job, but I think that there needs to be a larger body of work for everybody to see how that shakes out. I will say this though, both of those guys can play. They've both proven they can play in D1 games. And so it's not, not a lot of games, but both of them have played enough that we know they can go in and win for us, and we'll see how it shakes up.
Go ahead, Casey, then Matt.
Coach, can you speak to what you've seen from LJ Martin this spring and what you see as his next steps in his development in your offense?
Yeah, LJ is really good. We went several practices where he didn't do a whole lot. We were just kind of got him wrapped in bubble wrap out there, and then he had a death in his family. He went to a funeral for a few days, and then all of a sudden, a few days ago, we had a live drill, like live tackle to the ground, sort of scrimmage, 10 or 15 minutes of scrimmage type football. And he really wanted to go. I was kind of reluctant. I wasn't sure if we want to get him tackled much. And he definitely made a mark in that. We decided to let him play. And he reminded us all really fast that he's one of our best players on this team. He's a really good football player and did some really good things in that drill. And so I think the next step for LJ is we're asking him to be a better blocker, and we've challenged him. He's a good blocker, but I think he should be a dominant blocker. He's a big physical kid, and so that is one of our goals with him this spring, is just to become, just improve there.
Go ahead, Matt, then Jared.
Coach, earlier you mentioned you have good leaders on this team. Who are some of those guys offensively that are emerging as leaders for you?
LJ, Jake Retzloff would be one of them. Isaiah Jada, he's a great leader. Just has so much energy every day. Keelan Marion, Chase Roberts, Parker Kingston. We have good leaders on this team. Ethan Erickson, I'm probably forgetting one. Bruce Mitchell, he's one. I mean, it's a good group, man. We have a lot of guys that played a lot of football in the last couple of years, and all those guys have sort of earned the right to speak up when something needs to be said. And I just get out of the way, man. I let those guys handle most things. I don't have to do a lot of talking out there. Our guys they're running the show.
Last thing for me, what's your philosophy in spring in particular on quarterbacks being aggressive and maybe forcing the ball in places that they normally wouldn't, to try and figure out what they can and can't do?
Yeah, I don't really treat it any differently than we would in a game. I think we just talk about just executing the offense and knowing the situation. We put a down and distance on every play in practice and a yard line. So every single day, whatever period of practice we're in, that there's a situation there. So we talk about the context of that situation every play. And so with that, there are times to be more aggressive than not, so if you're backed up in your own third of the field and it's first or second quarter and it's a tough situation, third and long, whatever, we're going to be smarter than we would be if it's fourth down and you have to get it to win the game. Like, then obviously you can take more chances. There's a lot of different things. Sometimes it's third down and that you're going to maybe have a chance to go for it on fourth. So you might be a little more conservative than you would if you don't have a chance to go for it on fourth. There are a bunch of things that we work on every day. And I think that's like next step for Jake this year is he knows the offense really well, and he's not thinking about what everybody's doing every play. Now he can take in the play call and then really process it according to what the situation is. And I think that's a big part of his development, taking the next step.
Okay, last two questions, Jared, then Casey.
Hey, Rod, you kind of were touching on my question. We saw a little bit of specific situational work on Tuesday. How beneficial is that in spring? Do the kids really kind of buy into that when they really feel that that situational emphasis you were talking about?
Oh yeah, they love it. We're buying. We did a drill today. It's second down. You put a distance on it, second down, and then you play that play, and then you got to convert the third down, whatever that ends up being. So you're playing second down, we call it second down, play the third. We did that today. It was really fun. Both sides were really into it. Defense is cheering if they stopped us. The offense is saying that's another Cougar first down if we get it, and the guys are into it. And it's just a 2-play sequence. And then you put the ball down again, second down again, and do it again. And our players on both sides are having a blast with that, and they're competing hard, but they're having fun. bragging rights after practice, who won the drill, and then you go put the ball in the red zone and see if you can score. Put the ball in the low red zone, see if you can score. So those types of things that you get a lot of work done. The players, I think, compete and they understand the importance of the situation. They understand how that carries over to real football games. But you're able to do that in a controlled environment where you can, hopefully keep people healthy, and it's not as much of a grind as like a full scrimmage or a full game would be.
Go ahead, Casey. Last question.
Yeah, Coach, just glancing at the roster, specifically wide receiver, you have a lot of former track stars. Do you believe this is the fastest wide receiver unit you've had in your tenure at BYU?
Gosh, I don't know. I hadn't thought of it before you asked me that, so I'm kind of freezing on that. But yeah, we have some guys that can run. I mean, everybody knows Parker Kingston obviously had 2 punt returns for touchdowns last year, and Keelan Marion had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. And you don't do either of those things unless you're really fast. So that's 2 guys right there that can really run. And Dom McKenzie's a guy who was obviously really fast in track, and he's coming along. He's coming along. He shows up. His speed shows up every day. I'm probably forgetting some of the other track guys. McKay Hillstead. McKay Hillstead was a track guy in high school, and his speed shows up every day in practice in the run game. So I know for sure I'm forgetting some people, but yeah, track definitely carries over to football. It's not a 100%, but it definitely helps to have guys that can run.
All right. Thanks, A-Rod. Appreciate your time.
Sure thing. Good to talk to you guys.